delighted to be here to talk about Under the Italian Sun, which is the latest book which we have just had a chance to read.
It was beautiful.
Hi, I'm Sue Moorcroft. Thank you very much for all at Desborough, and particularly Shelagh and Lesley for inviting me today. We'd prefer to do a live event, but it's not possible at the moment. I'm very supportive of the libraries, of course, because not only do they support authors, but when I was a kid, they were kind of my saviour for a while, particularly when we came out of the army and into Civvy Street. I lived in Wellingborough then, another part of Northamptonshire, and the library there did, you know, just about save me from going bonkers, and books were my friend. But I'm here today to talk about Under the Italian Sun, which is just hitting shelves now and is available in ebook, paperback and audio. You can tell from the gorgeous cover that it's a summer book, and it's set mainly in Italy, although partly also in Brighton, which is somewhere else that I have links to via my brother and my son. And it's a book about Zia. Her full name is Zia Lucia Costa Chalmers, which is an enormous mouthful for one person, but that name is actually part of the plot, how she came by it, why her mother gave it to her. In fact, in the end, who her mother is, because she's not sure, and she's always wanted to know who her father is, and so that's what she sets out to discover. And it leads her, first of all, to a sunny plateau above a vineyard in Italy, the region of Umbria, where she knows there is a woman living who's called Lucia Costa. So she has part of Zia's name, and Zia believes that she has been named after her, which turns out to be true.
Now, I was fascinated by the character of Zia. She was so strong and bold and confident. And is this based on someone you know or yourself?
I'd like to be that young and pretty again. No, it's not really. The sparks for the book came from various places, but Zia herself just kind of evolved in my mind. Yes, she is quite strong, and I like my heroines to be as strong as my heroes. I don't see why her ex, Brendan, thought he could shove her around and sort of park her for a while and then come back to her when it suited him. And I don't see why her best friend Ursula's husband, Stefan, thought that he could pretty much do the same. I don't know if there's anything, you know, like those two men being best friends, whether there's anything there that they swap notes on how you treat women, but they definitely needed better guidance in my view. So Zia, some of her attitudes come from a friend of mine who was adopted. And so she shared with Zia this feeling of not exactly knowing what her backstory was. And she was very helpful to me, my friend. She's a school friend, and her story isn't the same. In fact, hers is more the material for a thriller than the books that I write. But at 18, she was driven to find out who her natural parents were. And so that's where that came from with Zia. And then during the course of research, I watched a documentary called Irene's Ghost, which was made by a filmmaker called Ian Cunningham of / Films. And it's his own, he also starred in it because his mother died when he was very young, and there seemed to be a mystery surrounding her. So he set out to discover what it was. And in common with Zia, and this was a complete coincidence that I watched this documentary, and when I suddenly realized that it was about postpartum psychosis, which affected Zia's mother, my ears, like, you know, pricked up, and I got in touch with him on Twitter to say how much I'd enjoyed it, and he offered to chat with me. And so we had a conversation just like this via Zoom. A bit odd having seen him on the telly screen to then see him more or less in my study. And he told me quite a few things about how he felt, specifically how he felt his birth had affected other people's lives. And so her attitudes came from there as well. But I think through being pretty self-sufficient, having lost the mum she thought she had at age 10 or 11 and living then with her gran and granddad, well, gran and pap, it was a bit, I suppose it made her grow up early. So maybe that's where her strength comes from.
Sue, you say that, you know, Zia is strong and Ursula is strong, but we get the impression toward middle of the book that Ursula is not strong and she needs a lot of help more than Zia. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd agree completely with you. Ursula, I think she was a strong enough woman. She's had episodes during her life where she's suffered from anxiety and depression. I don't know that we should consider that a weakness exactly. That's a medical condition. And when she has this horrible episode and her husband basically shows her the door, until he decides, is the way it comes across, and he'll think about it and decide whether she deserves a second chance, which sort of made me want to slap him, really. Yeah, she fell apart. She crumbled at that stage, and she's great in some ways. She's a great best friend, I think, because she is very concerned for Zia. She goes with her to Italy. She won't leave until she knows Zia's happy to stay there on her own. She then keeps in touch. Are you still okay? What's going on? You know, what's happening with Piero? What's happening with Lucia and Durante? So I think she had her strengths, but I think she was more a strong person going through a bad patch. And we all crumble sometimes.
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are being manipulated by men, aren't there? Altogether, even her father's family, himself manipulating his own family. Never mind the two husbands, the husband boyfriend in Brighton. So there's quite a lot of manipulation, and the father of Piero being manipulated by his girlfriend. Yeah,
that's true. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. Yes, Alfatore is a strong person who's kind of lapsed a bit. I can't think of a polite way to put it, except he's fallen into the thrall of a younger woman. And it takes him quite a while to see the truth. Yeah, I suppose that's true, that there is a certain amount of that. I think possibly only Brendan, the ex-boyfriend, is really aware. I think he is a
control freak.
Yeah, he is. He is. I think he probably sits at home planning, whereas the rest, I think Graziella, Salvatore's girlfriend, is just much more like that. She's just not a very nice person, and she's very self-involved. And I think Stefan, a little bit, he feels, I think, in all fairness, a lot of Stefan's poor attitude to Ursula comes from her being brought home very, very drunk by another man. And it's maybe his own insecurities that are to blame there, that rather than him waiting till she's sobered and saying, well, we really need to talk about this and what could have happened, it was like he pointed the finger and said, well, obviously you've had a thing with him, you've slept with him. And he didn't give her a chance, but maybe that comes from his own insecurity. And Gerardo, Zia's dad, is just a weak character, isn't he? She's disappointed in him. And some of the early readers have said to me, oh, I really expected her father to be a different character and to be strong and to sweep her off and turn out to be a millionaire or something, which is what Ursula says at the time. Says, I expect he'll be a millionaire and he'll buy you a Ferrari and clothe you in Dolce & Gabbana and take you to live in Milan. And I think that's what people might expect, which is why I did the opposite and made him a bit of a waster with no real moral compass either.
Well, if he'd have been a strong person, he wouldn't have let Zaya's mum down in the first place, would he?
No, that's absolutely true. He was very young, of course. He was 18 and he was brought up by quite strictly Catholic parents. But yeah, there was no excuse for what he did, in my view. He was happy for her to go back to the UK on her own and have the baby or not have the baby, as long as it was cleared away. And I think that happened quite a lot then, because we're talking Zia is 30 now. So, 30 years ago.
1990.
Yeah, my parents, I'm just a little older, I guess, but my parents wouldn't have been impressed by me being a single mother, I have to be honest. They weren't strictly religious, but they had quite a view of life and what was, they brought me up in quite a moral way. And I don't think they would have been very keen on that.
Especially we're talking about Catholic families here. So it's very much stronger and fiercer religion.
That's right. I was brought up until I was 8.5. I was in Catholic countries mainly. I was 2 years in England, but mainly I was in Malta and Cyprus. And the attitudes were not particularly flexible on things like relationships outside marriage. I was talking to friends about it on Sunday night, actually, and they were talking about at the age of 2 being naked on the beach and nobody minding. And I said, oh no, my mum never let me go naked on the beach at the age of 2. And then I suddenly thought, I said, oh no, but we would have lived in Cyprus or Malta. It probably was not,
not the
done thing at all, not on public beaches. So I think that possibly was part of it. And Gerardo's parents do say in the end, were we really that strict? Well, we did go to church a lot. Were we really that strict? And they were very keen on him not messing up his life with a girl, not getting a girl in trouble, as they used to say. And I was talking to an older lady who I've got to know through another book, actually. She was a naval wife in Malta, and she used the phrase quite unconsciously about somebody she got herself pregnant. And I said, no, women don't get themselves pregnant. This is a joint venture.
Yes.
And the man shouldn't be, whatever age we're talking about, 100 years ago or 1 year ago, nobody should be able to wash their hands of that. It's a joint issue that needs resolving in a way that both people can live with, really.
Do you always base your summer read books on places that you've visited, Sue?
Well, yes, I guess is the short answer, Lesley. In that I prefer to be able to visit the countries I write about. In fact, it's invariable that I do. But sometimes it's the other way around, that I want to write about a country. And so, well, I'll go on a trip there then.
So have you been to Bella Vista, or is it fictional?
It's yes and no. For 7 years, I went to a place in Umbria that ran courses and writing retreats called Arte Umbria, and its nearest town is about 10 kilometers away, called Monte Gabbione, and it's just this estate on its own on the side of a hill. And so Lucia and Durante's terrace is the terrace there, and the view of the mountains and the sunsets are exactly what's there, even the wisteria growing along the railings and things like that. But the rest, the vineyard and Monte Libertà, are completely fictional. And I rearranged the house very slightly to build that apartment on the side, because it's not there, but I didn't want, I wanted Zia to have the same view off the terrace, basically. So I didn't want her to just stay in one of the holiday cottages. I wanted her to, which anyway wouldn't have made sense, but I wanted her to stay that close by. So it kind of exists. And I had already written about Monte Libertà in One Summer in Italy. So I'd created it then, and a hotel which had the same kind of view, not actually the vineyard. But what I do find about places like that is that the view is something people pay for and fight over. And so that did become part of the story, that somebody was trying to buy the vineyard and all of that rocky shelf where Buona Vista and Il Refugio, Piero's home, they're next to one another on this plateau, and why they wanted all of it was all to do with tourism. So because they wanted the view. So yeah, it's fairly clear in my head, but I changed it a bit. It's like a new improved version.
And
there's a lot about wine growing and wine making, which I'm really interested in myself. How did you balance the need for giving information or over giving the information? How did you do that balance?
The winery and the vineyard, I didn't see as too big a problem. We had, in my years at Arte Umbria, I think 5 different visits to vineyards. And so I retained quite a lot, and I took quite a few pictures. And setting this book in Umbria when I'd been so often, I was really saved, because during the pandemic, if I'd set one in Portugal where I haven't been, I would have been in real, trouble, because I couldn't go. I normally would have expected to be there for several days, 7 days or so, and be able to write a chunk of the book. That didn't happen anyway, but I had done all this kind of research in advance, if you like. So I had all that in my memory. As far as the technical aspects go, I have 2 brothers, and they're both very supportive of my writing career. And one, during his retirement, has begun to do research for authors. His daughter, my niece, is also an author. She writes as Ella Albright and Nikki Moore. And so he does her research as well. And then he does some for a friend, 2 of my friends, he's done some research for them. So he did all the factual research about the terms and everything. I think people like wine tasting and the vineyard, because it's the kind of thing you do on holiday. What I had to rein back on was part of its place in the plot. This situation we had where this big company was trying to take over these 3 properties, as I mentioned, and my editor at the time did say to me, can we rein back on the business speak? Because I think you've just slightly overdone it. And maybe that comes from the fact that my first job out of college was in a bank. And I'm actually quite interested in how financially things work. And I occasionally read other people's books and think, well, that wouldn't work, because where would they get the money from? Or how would she get this? How would she get the license for that? And I'm very picky about getting that kind of thing right. And I think it is from that long ago banking experience. And so we tried to make that fade into the background and bring the actual nice things about the vineyard, about the how beautiful it is, and how many people work there, and the workings of the winery and the wine tastings and the tourism, and what it means to people as just a lovely place to be, really, rather than too much about sale and lease back and transporting wine across Europe and things like that.
When you're writing books, is it like an escapism for you to go?
Yeah, it is very much so, and never more than this year.
Yeah. So how did you find writing during the pandemic?
Well, I think I am very lucky that I have deadlines to adhere to. So, and also something I've always done in times of trouble is go to writing, whether it's bereavement or, you know, some other financial worries or whatever. If I write, I can get away from it. And so, yeah, I'm also lucky to have a garden, and we had some nice weather when I was planning this book. So I was able to do quite a lot of that in the garden, in the sunshine. And I had this big library of years of visits to go through and kind of remind myself. I didn't feel I had time to go, oh, no, it's too hard, you know, writing happy-ish things or mainly happy things during what for many people was an unhappy time. Well, none of us enjoy it, I don't think, but some people had a much worse time than I did with losing their jobs and, you know, one thing and another, and of course, losing their loved ones or being worried for their loved ones. So I felt I was very fortunate. And also, there's an entire industry around authors. If I had done the, oh no, it's too much thing, then that would affect my editor, the marketing team, the sales team, all kinds of the cover artist, all kinds of people. It would have left them to take up my slack, which I don't think is very fair. They were all working from home and having to homeschool and possibly not having a garden, not be lucky enough to have a garden and a big park to walk in and things like that, and perhaps have other people working at home. What was more of a challenge to begin with was my husband retired pretty much on the day we went into lockdown, and I'm used to him not being here and like walking in to do unreasonable things like ask me a question when I didn't want him to, or make a noise because he built a new shed and things like that.
Yes.
But we've got over all that now, we've adjusted.
It's for better or worse, but not for lunch.
Yes, that's exactly it, because I'm used to reading my Kindle at lunch or listening to an audiobook or reading a paperback. I'm not used to having to talk. Unreasonable.
Do you want to say something, Sheila?
I was interested in the Irishness of the characters in Brighton. I wondered why you chose an Irish as against Scottish or British or whatever. Was there a particular reason?
Yes, because I became aware of people feeling that authors are too insular. Because I'm English, I should make every character English, and so I try and keep away from that. I think in Northamptonshire we're fairly multicultural anyway. My background is multicultural and I love to travel. So I tried not to make everybody English, although it's kind of my go-to, and some books are set in Cambridgeshire or partly set in Cambridgeshire. So although we do have a multicultural presence in Cambridgeshire, you're still going to get the majority of people are English in an English country village. So I try and think outside that box. But also there's quite a lot of Irish people go to Brighton as students. My son was a student in Brighton at Brighton Institute of Modern Music. And he shared, the flat above was Irish guys, and also somebody on his course, in his cohort, he was very friendly with. And it meant that they didn't go home. Like Paul always went home for holidays, or most of the time came back to Northamptonshire for holidays. We'd get a text saying, can you come and pick me up? And also, can you pick up my friend Pete, who lives next door and lives nearby, and things like that, you know. But I was always struck by the Irish kids stayed in England for the whole thing, because obviously it's much more money and a greater distance.
Yeah.
And so I made her one of those, really, because there were a lot of art students in Brighton. And I do go right into the backstories of all my characters. You know, characters aren't born on page one. It's more that I had to think, why are they such good friends? When did they meet, Ursula and Zia? And so for them to have been at uni at the same time and shared a house, people make very strong friendships then. And I thought that maybe that could be like a counterbalance to Zia's interrupted childhood of her mum always taking her from one place to another, and then she was taken to yet another place to be with her gran and pap, and then went to uni at 18. So I thought it would be a nice bit of sort of solidarity for her. Should we have a last question from Lesley before we end up?
Yeah, I loved the book. I thought it was brilliant. I did have to check ages and when people were born, and in the end I wished it was been printed at the back of the book so that I could have had a look. But I would love you to do another book based on Ursula, going back to finding a self again, perhaps back in Ireland. I think that would just, because Sarah's got a happy ending, but poor Ursula didn't really have an happy ending, and I think there's another book there.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, actually. I hadn't thought about it, but quite a few people, early readers on NetGallery and the book bloggers who are on the blog tour, said the same thing, that they'd like to know a bit more about Ursula. And she's probably a little bit different to a lot of my heroines, with her sleeve of tattoos and working in a tattoo parlor. And I do actually know where I can do the research for a tattoo parlor. And so I have already talked to my agent about it. It won't be the summer 2022 book though, because I've already begun that, and it's set in France in the same area that Just for the Holidays was. But maybe summer 2023. I need, contracts are only so many books in advance anyway, so I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but it's in my notebook. And yeah, I think maybe we could use that book to take a look at Zia and Piero and see how they're getting on as well, and Lucia and Durante, and maybe see whether Zia's dad Gerardo has got to be a bit of a nicer chap over time with his yet another
perhaps a good granddad.
Yeah, maybe.
Perhaps a good granddad.
Yeah, they could have a baby, couldn't they?
Yeah.
They could. I do have a timeline for when everybody was born in the book, Lesley, because it was doing my head in. It really was. I'm not great with timelines anyway. So yeah, I have a thing of everybody's name and roughly their function in the book.
That's what I finished up doing.
Yeah. And my brother did it for me as well to check that it all worked out. So yeah, well, I think we have just about overrun the time we were allotted.
Lesley,
well, we'd like to wish you good
cheer and the next book, and thank you for asking us to come along, and we hope to see you in Desborough.
I will definitely come back. Thank you very much. I'm only toasting you in tea. But,
we got the Italian stuff.
If I'd known that, I would have got some Orvieto Classico. So just to finish up then, my publishers asked me to remind people that we should see Under the Italian Sun in supermarkets, bookshops, online retailers, ebooks, audiobooks from around about now on. And it's set in Italy. And we hope very much that you enjoy it and that it gives you an escape from the UK, even if you don't manage it in real life. Thank you, everybody who's listening, and thank you very much, Sheila and Lesley and Desborough Library and Community Hub.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, ladies. Bye-bye.
Bye.